What's up, everybody? Dan here. Today we're going to be taking a look at Moza's R9 V2 and CS V2P direct drive bundle. Yes, that is a mouthful to say, but essentially what we have here is a revised version of their older R9 and CS steering wheel bundle. This newer bundle has addressed a few issues the original had and also added in some new features as well. You may notice I'm also using Moza's SRP pedals here in this review, but we're only going to concentrate on the wheelbase and the steering wheel here for this one. I'll have a standalone video on the pedals at a later date. Before we get any further though, I need to give you the disclaimer that Moza did send me these products out for review at no cost, but as usual, they've had no input on anything you see or hear in this video. All views and opinions are my own. They didn't pay me any money for this review, and they definitely didn't see it before you guys do. The R9 bundle falls mid-range in Moza's lineup, and it's currently on sale for $659 US at the time of this review. That puts it right in between the cost of the two bundles that I believe it directly competes with. That's Fanatic's CSL DD 8Nm bundle at a lower $499, and Thrustmaster's more expensive SF1000 T818 bundle for about $1,000, both of which I've reviewed here on the channel, and you can find them in the equipment review playlist if you care to look at those. Now, these bundles certainly aren't identical as far as features, but all three do offer a mid-range plug-and-play racing experience on PC with similar claimed power outputs. The CSL DD bundle is going to be the only one here of the three that comes with pedals, but they're very lackluster, so whichever one you choose, you're probably going to want to invest in a good set of load cell pedals regardless of which bundle you go with. Now for a bit of an elephant in the room here. Logitech also sells a similar mid-range direct drive bundle, but their ecosystem is pretty much non-existent at the time of this review, so I've intentionally left it out of this comparison. Until Logitech offers additional steering wheels and accessories, I do not recommend purchasing their bundle at this time. Now, I will dive specifically into the R9 V2 and the CS V2P in a moment, but since I'm sure many of you researching the R9 are also cross-shopping the Fanatic and the Thrustmaster, I want to get my opinion on how they compare out of the way first, because I think that's pretty important. I'm going to give my thoughts on this stuff based on my user experience and not what is claimed on the manufacturer's website. Those are two very different things, and in my opinion, user experience is way more important than claimed specs and features. So let's start off with overall power. The Moza and the Fanatic feel almost identical. Honestly, if you were blindfolded and could somehow use the exact same steering wheel on both bases, it would be very hard to tell which one is which from a power standpoint alone. They also both seem to clip at similar output levels game to game, so they're just very similar from a power output. The Thrustmaster, on the other hand, does feel quite a bit stronger, so if you're just after raw strength, you may want to consider it, but keep in mind both Moza and Fanatic offer more powerful wheelbases, whereas the T818 is the strongest wheelbase Thrustmaster offers, and their only direct drive at this time. Overall strength, though, isn't the whole story. Smoothness, in my opinion, is a much more important factor, and this is actually where the Moza really starts to distance itself from the competition. Now, most direct drive bases by nature are going to have a bit of notchiness when they're turned off, and you will feel it. That is normal. But manufacturers use tricks in their software to minimize that when the wheelbase is actually turned on and in use. And Moza has done a fantastic job here with the R9. It is perfectly smooth when it's powered up. And this is an area that both Fanatic and Thrustmaster do fall behind on. Now, to be fair, over time, Fanatic has improved the smoothness of the CSL DD with firmware updates, but it's still not as smooth as the R9. Likewise, the T818 is the least smooth out of the bunch, but it's to be expected since it's the latest released out of the three, and they've had less time to dial in the firmware and the software. Certainly, these results could change over time, but this is how they stack up today at the point of this review. The last comparison I'll make of the three is personally the most important for me, and that's the build quality of the components. There is no other way to sugarcoat this, so I'm just going to tell you like it is. The Fanatic and the Thrustmaster feel like toys compared to the Moza. The Moza feels like it's built for serious sim racers that want the ultimate quality and realism when they sim race, whereas the other two unfortunately feel more like toys that are kind of aimed at general gamers. It's not that either one of those routes is wrong or right, that's just the easiest way to clearly explain the difference. And I'll end this section with this. All three options are great, In fact, they are all leaps and bounds better than anything we've had to choose from not that long ago. But at this time, it simply comes down to me to which one feels more real in hand, and the Moza is better by a large margin in this department, and it's certainly the one that I would spend my own money on today. Now, that's not to say that the Moza is perfect. It certainly also has pros and cons, which is a great segue for us to dive into the specifics of the R9 V2 and the CS V2P bundle. Now, I really like Moza's simple naming scheme for their wheelbases, and as its name suggests, the R9 is rated at 9 Newton meters of torque. That places it right at the bottom of the mid-range market. Everyone has their own opinion on this, but I personally consider mid-range wheelbases as anything that can appeal to the masses. So it has enough power to suit most players, but not so much that you're paying a premium for power that you'll likely never use. And in my opinion, the magic number of that is somewhere between 8 and 12 Newton meters. Under 8, you're probably going to have issues with clipping, and above 12, you're probably not going to use as much of that torque as you think you may. You can probably stretch that number to 15, but mainly I'm going to say 8 to 12 Newton meters. And at 9, the R9 offers plenty of usable power, but also with a small overhead for extreme situations. One of the biggest complaints that you will see online about the original R9 is that it had a pretty bad overheating problem. The original R9 would overheat to the point that it would reduce the power significantly until it cooled down, and in my opinion, that's not something that should be happening for a product of this cost. So that's one of the main reasons Moza has revised the design and launched the V2, and I'm happy to report that I haven't had any overheating issues in my extensive use of the R9 V2. Even after several hours, it's barely warm to the touch. So whatever they've done here, it's done the trick. Like most of Moza's other gear, the R9 is extremely solid and rigid. There's absolutely no play or wiggle in the shaft, and they also utilize a standard automotive grade quick release identical to what's used in real world racing cars. And honestly, I think the other manufacturers need to stop messing around, and they just need to adopt this style too, because they're the best of the best. All right, so let's run through some pros and cons of the R9, and we're going to start out with the pros. It has enough power to suit most drivers. There may be some people that want more, but generally speaking, 9 Newton meters is going to be more than enough. It's extremely well built and solid. It is definitely superior to others I've used in the same class of wheelbases. It's completely free of the overheating issue from the original R9. In my opinion, it uses the best automotive grade quick release system. It's been perfectly reliable and free of any issues during my use, which has been roughly 5 or 6 months. The Moza Pit House software feels modern and it is very easy to use. It has a very small footprint, so it's easy to get your monitor and your setup exactly the way you want it. And the last pro is that it's very quiet. It is basically silent, so you're not going to bother anybody in the house with you. All right, there are a few cons here. First one is that it has limited compatibility with some of the older Moza steering wheels. You can mount up any Moza steering wheel to it and you can use it, but the button functionality may be limited on some of the older ones. So you're just going to want to do a little research and verify that your steering wheel you have will work with this new wheelbase. Next con is it has no side or front mount options. It is bottom mount only without using some adapters. And the last con here is that you may find it clips on occasion in really extreme situations. Now let's jump on over to the CS V2P steering wheel that comes in the bundle. So at first glance, the CS V2 looks very similar to the V1. Most of what has changed is actually internally for compatibility with Moza's newer wheelbases, but there also have been slight visual changes as well. In general, though, they are essentially the same steering wheel. Now, the difference between the V2 and the V2P is the addition of the 2 dual clutch paddles on the back. These are used in certain race cars that utilize a dual stage clutch system for launching from a dead stop. For example, Formula One cars use this. They use the 2 different clutches to manage torque to minimize wheel spin off the line. They're used independently of each other, and one is for the initial launch, and then the second one is used to allow for full torque once the car is already in motion, and this combination allows for the smoothest and quickest acceleration from a dead stop. Whether or not you'll use these will be highly dependent on what type of cars you sim race. Personally, I hardly ever use them, but I have tested them and they work as intended. They are progressive like a normal pedal, not clicky like a shifter. For my use, I actually prefer having the one larger paddle for shifting on each side, so it's easier to find that paddle as the wheel is rotating around quickly and violently during racing. And believe it or not, after many months of use, I still find myself accidentally grabbing one of the clutch paddles when I'm trying to shift instead of the shift paddle. So it's just a minor annoyance, but again, this is going to be a personal preference thing. I think most people are going to prefer to have them rather than not, so I think Moza made the right choice including them here. And speaking of the paddle shifters, they are magnetic and they feel amazing to use, but they are obnoxiously loud out of the box. They are by far the loudest sim racing paddles I have used. Now, luckily, there are silencing pads included in the box, but they are a pain in the ass to install, and in my opinion, they should be pre-installed by Moza before you buy it. They come pre-installed on Moza's KS wheel and some of the others, so I'm quite confused why they're not pre-installed on this one, but hopefully at some point they will be. Both of the shifters and the clutches are adjustable, and they can be configured to suit your personal needs. The overall quality of the steering wheel and its component is fantastic. As I said earlier in the review, this does not feel at all like a toy. It feels like a premium real-world steering wheel. It doesn't bend or flex, all the buttons feel great, the faux leather is thick and chunky, and it all still looks brand new after many months of hard use. This is not something I can say about other competitors I've used. The only issue I've had with it, and it's more of an annoyance than an actual issue, is sometimes I can hear a slight rattle as it rotates a full 360 degrees. It's almost as if an electrical harness inside is loose and it's moving around as the steering wheel rotates. I reached out to Moza and they asked me to send a video, but I never got around to it. It's really not a big enough deal for me for the hassle of sending them a video and then possibly having to send them the wheel and all that good stuff. I did a little digging and it appears that there have been some other reports of the same thing on other Moza steering wheels, so it may just be down to the way they have the electronics mounted inside their steering wheels. Now we're going to hit some pros and cons of the CS V2P. And let's start out with the pros. Just like the wheelbase, it is extremely good build quality and a very premium feel. It absolutely feels like a real steering wheel. It's completely round, so it can be used for any type of driving. It's very versatile. At 13 inches in diameter, it has a large and very realistic size. It has plenty of buttons and rotary dials. It also comes with two multi-use D-pad buttons, which are very convenient for a multitude of reasons. It comes with the dual paddles, as I said before, which for some users may be very important. It has adjustable backlighting on most of the main buttons. And the last pro is that it has a built-in high-quality rev light strip that looks really good, and in the Moza software you can customize it and turn it off and on just like the lights itself on the buttons. Now for the cons, there's only two. One is the rattle that I hear on occasion, and the other is the very loud paddles. But like I said, in the box you'll find the little strips that quiet it down, and if you take the time to install them, it's much, much better. So now I'm going to sum this review up with my final thoughts, and in short, this is the nicest overall bundle I have used in the mid-range wheelbase market, period. It has an incredible build quality and it feels professional grade compared to many of the others that feel a bit more toy-like at similar prices and some even more expensive. And at 9 Newton meters, it has a very reasonable amount of force feedback that should be plenty for most sim racers. And most importantly, that force feedback is extremely smooth and quiet. Of course, like anything else, it's not perfect, but it's pretty close, which is why this will continue to be my main setup going forward for the foreseeable future. For the price, it really packs one heck of a punch, and I think most people would be more than satisfied with this bundle. So that's going to be it for this one, guys. As always, thanks so much for checking out my videos and reviews. I truly appreciate you guys tuning in. I really hope that you enjoy the rest of the day, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. We'll see you later.